Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we have undertaken a pretty monumental task.
I think that's putting it lightly.
We are sorting through a massive stack of global reports that stretch from, and this is no exaggeration, the edge of the Martian ice caps all the way to some incredibly high-stakes political negotiations happening right now in Moscow and Washington.
Right. And our mission, as always, is to find the threads connecting all of it.
Exactly. To deliver you the essential, maybe surprising connections you need to feel, genuinely well-informed about what's happening in the world.
That really is the core of it today. We're trying to identify how these seemingly disparate events all link up. For example, how does a brand new proprietary AI chip from Google somehow connect to record electricity price hikes in, of all places, New Jersey?
Or how does brand new research about the human brain actually affect our understanding of global political stability? It sounds like a stretch, but it's not.
It's not at all. We are cutting through the noise to make sure you walk away with a nuanced, analytical understanding, not just a laundry list of headlines.
And we have some genuinely mind-bending stuff today, just to set the stage for how wide we're going.
Yeah, let's tease some of this.
We are unpacking the ultimate Martian mystery. This feature beneath the South Polar ice cap that scientists were so hopeful was a massive underground lake of liquid water.
A huge deal for the search for life.
A huge deal. But it turned out to be, mostly rock and dust. But that refutation, that answer, actually opens up a whole new line of planetary inquiry. It's fascinating.
And we will also get a little philosophical and maybe a little anxious about our own maturity.
Slight chuckle. I'm already anxious.
New neuroscientific research suggests the human brain doesn't truly hit its adult mode, the final phase of its development, until a person's early 30s.
The early 30s, that changes everything. It completely redefines concepts like youth and adolescence.
It really does.
Plus, we'll be analyzing the complex and, frankly, highly unusual diplomatic ballet playing out in the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine negotiations. We're going to focus specifically on the intense pressure points and the very controversial leaks surrounding that process.
And on the tech front, we are diving deep into the high-stakes AI chip battle. It's pitting Alphabet against NVIDIA.
The king.
The undisputed king, and this rivalry has already sent ripples through the NASDAQ and is now, as we mentioned, straining the world's energy infrastructure.
It's a true global snapshot where science meets geopolitics and where technology is reshaping both human cognition and, the very structure of the economy.
So let's jump right in. Let's start with Act 1, the evolving planet and human cognition.
Okay, so we begin about 140 million miles away on Mars, with a classic case of mistaken identity that forced scientists to deploy some serious technical acrobatics to figure out what was really going on beneath the ice.
Right, so let's set the stage. Back in 2018, there was this huge scientific buzz.
I remember this.
Yeah, everyone does. The initial signals suggested what appeared to be a massive, stable underground body of liquid water.
Right, under the South Polar ice cap of Mars.
Exactly, and the hope was just immense because, liquid water is the one essential ingredient for life as we know it. But now we have a definitive new conclusion from NASA.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Correct, and specifically from their Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or MRO.
The MRO. That's the satellite that's been giving us those incredible high-resolution images of the Martian surface for years, isn't it?
That's the one. But for this, they used a completely different methodology. They had to pull off something pretty special to get this definitive data.
So what was it? What did they have to do?
Well, this is where the engineering just, it really shines. To confirm or deny that initial 2018 radar signal, the MRO researchers had to use a new radar technique.
Yeah.
And this technique required the orbiter to perform a significant and very dedicated roll maneuver.
A roll maneuver, like a barrel roll,
Right.
with a satellite that's millions of miles away.
Pretty much. Think of it like that. A deliberate, off-routine barrel roll just to get the precise angle necessary for the radar to penetrate the ice and accurately map the density and composition of what's underneath.
Wow. That can't be standard operating procedure.
Not at all. This type of action is incredibly risky. It deviates from all the standard operational parameters. One wrong move, one glitch, and you could lose the entire spacecraft.
So they took this huge risk. They did the satellite acrobatics. And after all that effort, what was the, disappointing but definitive final answer?
The final answer is that the initial signal, the one that looked so much like liquid water, is now overwhelmingly likely to be composed of just rock and dust.
No secret Martian ocean, though.
No, not a massive liquid lake anyway. The density readings, the way the new radar data interacted with that subsurface structure,
Yeah.
it just doesn't support the idea of stable liquid water existing right there, right now.
So it definitively refutes one of the major hypotheses in the search for water on Mars.
It does, it's a big deal.
But I imagine while that specific idea is, a bit dampened, the good news has to be the technology itself.
Oh, absolutely. The new radar capability that they developed specifically for this mission is extremely promising for future explorations.
So even if it sends them back to the drawing board for finding current Martian water, the capability itself is a major technical advance.
A huge advance. And, speaking of Mars being more dynamic than we thought, we also have new images that have revealed these hidden traces of a recent ice age on the planet.
A recent ice age.
In geological terms, yes. It suggests Mars isn't just this desolate, static red sphere. It's a dynamic planet. It has a complex climatic history, much like Earth does.
And understanding that history is critical, right?
Yeah.
Why does confirming a recent ice age matter so much for the search for life?
Well, it reinforces the possibility that if microbial life ever existed in the past, or maybe even exists now, it would be down in those protected subsurface environments.
Sheltered from the ice.
Exactly. Insulated from the harsh surface radiation and those wild temperature swings. It also helped us understand planetary climate processes in general, how these massive climatic shifts happen and what factors really drive them.
Okay, so if Mars is a bit of a letdown on the liquid water front for now, let's pivot to life beyond Earth, because there are some recent studies suggesting that some of the icy moons in our own solar system might actually harbor boiling oceans.
This completely flips our assumptions about where you can find habitable zones. It's fascinating.
Boiling oceans? How is that even possible on a frozen moon?
We usually associate extreme cold with these outer bodies, right? But the idea is that these oceans would be trapped beneath massive layers of ice, kilometers thick.
Right, so the pressure would be immense.
Immense. And that sheer pressure, combined with internal heating, maybe from intense tidal forces generated by a nearby gas giant like Jupiter, or from the moon's own core activity, could create these extreme high-pressure thermal environments.
And water can stay liquid under enough pressure, even way above its normal boiling point.
That's the key. The pressure keeps the water liquid, but the thermal energy means it could be constantly boiling internally.
So it totally changes the parameters of where life might survive.
It does. It suggests that life could potentially thrive in environments like high-pressure thermal vents, kilometers beneath an icy crust. It's a whole new place to look.
From potential boiling oceans to some pretty serious stellar drama, we also got a report on the strange case of Kepler-56.
Ah, yes, the red giant star with the very unusual rotational characteristic.
What's the leading hypothesis for its bizarre spin?
It's quite dramatic. The theory is that it may have consumed one of its own planets.
It ate a planet.
Essentially, yes. The star, as it expanded and evolved into a red giant, would have literally swallowed the celestial body, and that event would have significantly altered the star's rotation and potentially even its surface composition.
It's like a slow-motion stellar catastrophe.
Yeah, it really is. It demonstrates the incredibly violent, dynamic nature of stellar evolution. It's a good reminder that orbits and stellar systems aren't static forever. Planets can be lost or consumed, and that fundamentally changes the entire system.
Okay, now let's bring it all the way back to Earth's history, because we've had a groundbreaking discovery that apparently pushes back the timeline for life's emergence by nearly 1 billion years.
This is a monumental shift. Researchers found 3.3 billion-year-old biosignatures.
And biosignatures are basically chemical evidence of life, right? Not fossils, but traces.
Exactly, chemical fingerprints. And they found them in ancient meteorites and sedimentary rocks. This suggests that complex, organized life was emerging much, much earlier than we had previously confirmed.
How much earlier are we talking?
It suggests life might have gotten started almost as soon as the planet was stable enough to support it. It radically shortens the window between a habitable planet and the emergence of life itself.
And this ties back to our later segment on technology, because artificial intelligence tools were apparently essential in making this discovery.
They were completely indispensable. Traditional methods, looking through a microscope, might miss these incredibly subtle biochemical indicators in the rock samples.
Too faint to see.
Right. But the AI tools, they refined the analysis, they sported patterns and chemical anomalies that signaled the presence of these ancient biosignatures that the human eye would just gloss over.
So AI isn't just reshaping our future. It's becoming this invaluable tool that helps us decode our deepest past.
It's a perfect example of that.
Speaking of deep decoding, let's turn the lens inward to, well, the ultimate frontier, the human brain. We have a fascinating piece of new research that might just force everyone in their late 20s to reevaluate some of their life decisions.
A slight chuckle. It might. This research identifies 5 distinct eras of brain development. And what's truly remarkable, the real headline finding, is that the brain's final structural and functional adult mode.
Okay.
It doesn't actually start until a person's early 30s, specifically around age 32.
32. That's so much later than I think anyone assumes. I always thought, maybe 21, 25 at the latest.
That's what most people think. But this is based on tracking the development of both white and gray matter across thousands of subjects over long periods of time. The data is pretty robust.
So what are the specific structural changes that are still happening between, say, 22 and 32 that mean we're not fully adult yet?
The continued development is primarily focused in the prefrontal cortex.
And that's the part of the brain responsible for
complex decision-making, weighing long-term consequences, emotional regulation, and all of our advanced executive functions.
really grown-up stuff.
All the grown-up stuff. The brain is still pruning synapses, it's refining its communication pathways. So this prolonged development suggests that while individuals in their mid-20s might look and feel like adults, their brain architecture is still, scientifically speaking, under construction. And that has a real impact on things like impulse control and full long-term risk assessment.
This has massive implications for society, doesn't it? If we impose all these adult expectations.
Like what?
Like, full financial stability, permanent career choices, major personal commitments like marriage. If we expect that from people in their mid-20s, we're doing it while their brains are scientifically still optimized for high cognitive flexibility and learning, and maybe even for higher risk-taking.
Exactly. It makes a strong scientific case for this concept of prolonged adolescence or emerging adulthood. It requires us to rethink everything from educational pathways to legal definitions of maturity, even societal support structures that often just abruptly cut off around age 21 or 25.
So if we know the brain remains this flexible until age 32, the natural next question is, can we optimize or even accelerate that late-stage development?
And that brings us to this very interesting, though still theoretical, concept that futurists are proposing. They call it the cognitive corridor.
The cognitive corridor, what is that?
It's a theoretical mental pathway that supposedly promotes swift enlightenment or, let's say, a heightened state of perception. The idea is that the state isn't achieved randomly.
You don't just stumble into it.
Right. It's achieved through a confluence of structured mental exercises, deliberate environmental design, and increasingly interaction with sophisticated artificial intelligence.
So instead of randomly having a moment of clarity or wisdom, you could theoretically engineer it.
That's the underlying goal. The concept links directly to established cognitive neuroscience. We already know that practices like mindfulness and focused attention can effectively declutter our mental frameworks.
Sure.
Well, futurists suggest that AI could act as a kind of cognitive scaffolding. It could guide a user through mental exercises that are perfectly tailored to maximize their efficiency, allowing their brain to traverse this corridor to a state of rapid understanding and advanced problem solving.
That sounds like a fascinating way to integrate AI. Not just as a tool for, looking up information, but as a framework for actually restructuring our cognition, optimizing human intelligence itself.
It is. But the analysis here is crucial. The big challenge is ensuring that these cognitive enhancements serve to uplift humanity broadly.
And not just create a new form of social stratification.
Exactly. You don't want a new class of cognitive haves and have-nots based purely on who has access to these AI-enhanced mental frameworks.
A very important point.
Yeah.
Okay, moving from abstract enlightenment to more concrete ailments, let's look at the chemistry of mood disorders. This ties directly into the brain's metabolic health.
This is a critical health focus, and it really shifts the paradigm away from looking solely at neurotransmitter imbalances, like serotonin.
Which has been the dominant model for decades.
For decades, this new research links chronic stress directly to a reduction in ATP in the brain.
And ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That's the fundamental energy molecule for our cells, right?
Yeah. That's the one. It's the cellular fuel. So the compelling hypothesis here is that the brain is literally running on a low battery, and that manifests as symptoms of mood disorders.
That's an incredible way to frame it. And they've identified something specific.
They have. Researchers identified a specific protein, connexin 43, as being critical for mood regulation because it facilitates the release and the management of that ATP.
And what happened when they tested this protein? What was the experiment?
Well, in animal models, in mice manipulating this protein, connexin 43, even without any external stressors, was enough to induce symptoms that are very similar to depression and anxiety.
Wow. So it suggests the lack of cellular energy regulation is a causal factor, not just a symptom.
That's the key takeaway. And crucially, restoring the function of that protein reversed the symptoms.
So here is where it gets really interesting for the future of treatment. This suggests a completely new therapeutic target. It's not about focusing on serotonin or dopamine level.
It's about focusing on the brain's metabolic health and its energy pathways.
It's a huge shift.
It is, and it makes sense when you think about it. We've known for a long time that conditions like obesity and diabetes, which profoundly disrupt the body's energy metabolism, have long been linked to higher rates of mental health issues.
Right.
This study provides a potential chemical pathway. It offers hope for targeted, non-traditional treatments, pharmacological or maybe even dietary interventions for chronic mood disorders by managing the energy flow rather than just the signaling molecules.
From the 32-year-old brain to a new target for depression, it's clear that science is moving incredibly fast. And speaking of speed, let's jump straight into Act 2, because the speed of the AI revolution is causing some significant market and energy upheaval all over the globe. Okay, here's where the physics of advanced computation meet the fierce, winner-take-all competition of Silicon Valley. We saw the NASDAQ composite decline pretty significantly recently.
We did.
And it was driven almost entirely by a sharp drop in NVIDIA shares. Why? What happened?
Well, NVIDIA has been the undisputed king of AI chips, right? Particularly their GPUs, their graphics processing units, which are essential for running these large language models. But the landscape is finally and dramatically changing.
And the rivalry is escalating because Alphabet, the parent company of Google, is now directly entering NVIDIA's market territory.
They're coming straight for them with a new proprietary AI chip strategy.
So Alphabet's strategy is basically to build their own chips. These are their tensor processing units, their TPUs.
Oh, right.
And they're building them to run their own huge models like Gemini, which in turn reduces their reliance on buying NVIDIA's GPUs. So how does that competitive move translate into a stock tumble for the incumbent king?
It's all about perception of the future market. Investors are very quickly reassessing NVIDIA's near monopoly status. If a client as massive as Google moves a significant portion of its computing power in-house,
it signals a long-term erosion of NVIDIA's market share.
Exactly. This maneuver, where one tech giant builds a moat around its own AI capability, it contributed directly to NVIDIA's stock tumble as investors began to price in that future competition.
And the sheer investment figures we're seeing really underscore the intensity of this. This isn't just a small skirmish.
Not at all. Look at Amazon, for instance. They recently announced a substantial commitment of $50 billion specifically into AI advancement.
$50 billion.
And that includes chip development and infrastructure. That kind of capital commitment shows that every single major player is scrambling to dominate the future of processing power, whether they do it by buying it from NVIDIA or building it themselves.
So let's look at how this AI power surge is now reaching the consumer and how companies are trying to manage that experience. We have several significant updates here, starting with Meta's messaging platform, WhatsApp.
Right. So Meta announced that general-purpose AI chatbots, including Microsoft's very popular Copilot, will be officially restricted on WhatsApp.
When does that take effect?
It starts January 15th, 2026. And this is a massive policy decision that sends a very clear signal to the market.
So what's Meta's reasoning here? Why block something like Copilot?
It's a protective stance. It's about user experience, it's about data control, and it's about their own platform regulations. WhatsApp relies very heavily on its brand of end-to-end encryption and user privacy.
So by restricting these third-party general AI models.
Yeah. Meta is defining what kind of AI interactions are acceptable within their walled garden, their ecosystem. They're trying to maintain platform integrity and, most importantly, control the user experience.
So you could still use Copilot, just not inside WhatsApp.
Exactly. You can use the dedicated apps, but it won't be integrated into that highly private WhatsApp ecosystem.
Meanwhile, OpenAI, sensing that friction is the enemy of adoption, is streamlining its flagship product, ChatGPT.
Yes. They've recognized that making things seamless is key. They've integrated voice and text capabilities into a single, unified interface.
So you don't have to switch modes anymore.
Right. The old requirement of toggling between controls to go from typing a query to having a conversation read back to you is gone. This fosters a much more natural, dynamic conversation. It makes the AI interaction feel frictionless and more intuitive.
We also have a new player, Character.ai, launching CAI Kids.
This is a child-safe AI companion for story creation.
And this is obviously addressing that huge need for a controlled, ethical integration of AI into tools for minors.
It is. CAI Kids is designed from the ground up to be a safe digital dialogue space. It focuses on guided story creation and learning. It's a real attempt to balance the technological advantages of early AI exposure with those deep concerns we all have over data privacy, dependence, and psychological safety for younger users.
And finally, an update that I think will excite any regular YouTube user who suffers from content overload.
Chuckle. So, everyone.
Pretty much. YouTube is testing an AI-driven chatbot feature to allow users much greater customization and filtering of their home feed.
And this is long overdue. For years, users have rightly complained about the algorithmically driven, often messy and irrelevant recommendations that seem to prioritize the platform's metrics over user satisfaction.
So this new feature aims to empower users to curate their own content consumption.
Exactly. Using AI to cut through the platform's overwhelming volume and actually personalize their experience.
Okay, switching gears completely. Let's look at the future of gaming hardware and autonomous transport, starting with Valve's new Steam machine.
So Valve is positioning the Steam machine to look and feel like a traditional console, but the pricing strategy is the key thing to watch here.
What are they signaling?
They are clearly signaling that the cost will align with current high-end PC market standards, not the subsidized price point you'd typically see from a PlayStation or an Xbox.
So it's a high-performance PC experience, but wrapped in a dedicated, living room-friendly device. And that higher price point, it completely defines the standard console business model.
It does. That model is usually sell the hardware at a loss and make money on the games. Valve's approach reflects their ambition to offer the flexibility of PC gaming without the complexity of building your own rig.
But it presents a marketing challenge, right?
A huge one. Industry analysts are already questioning whether consumers will embrace a gaming device that intentionally blurs that line without offering the console-style affordability that typically drives mass market adoption.
A tough sell.
Yeah.
Now on to transportation, specifically achieving high levels of automation. Uber, in collaboration with Rewired, has launched a fully driverless robotaxi service in Abu Dhabi.
In United Arab Emirates, yes. And Abu Dhabi is actively positioning itself as a global tech and innovation hub, which makes it a perfect testing ground for this kind of technology.
And this service is now fully automated.
Fully. It's achieving what's known as SAE automation levels 4 and 5. This deployment signals a major step toward that future of transportation as a service.
And the goals are what you'd expect: enhancing safety, reducing congestion, lowering pollution by relying on electric vehicles.
Right.
But the challenges remain significant. We've seen previous issues with robotaxis in other cities causing traffic jams and confusion.
Not to mention the looming concern over job displacement for traditional drivers.
That's the big one. The success of this hinges entirely on robust system reliability and sophisticated fail-safes. The companies need to collaborate very closely with local governments to ensure the infrastructure can handle level 5 autonomy, while at the same time, we as a society need to address the impacts of the mass job replacement that this technology promises.
We're seeing similar innovation with similar massive implications in battery technology.
Yes, specifically for electric vehicles, but also for grid storage and global energy independence.
And this is about solid-state sodium batteries.
This is a huge item.
Yeah.
Sodium is significantly more abundant globally than lithium. It's basically salt.
Right.
Which makes these new batteries cheaper, potentially longer lasting, and environmentally less impactful during the extraction and processing stages.
So why does the shift from lithium to sodium matter beyond just the cost? It has a crucial geopolitical angle. Nations are urgently seeking energy independence. Lithium prices fluctuate wildly, and the supply chains are highly concentrated in just a few foreign nations.
So this offers a way out of that dependency.
It offers a pathway to bolster domestic manufacturing capabilities and reduce reliance on critical foreign imports. It provides a real strategic advantage in the green energy transition.
And now we come to where that AI and chip revolution collides, and I mean violently collides, with the energy grid. This next section on the power crisis facing the PJM interconnection is genuinely alarming, and it hits home for millions of Americans.
What's just fascinating here is the sheer speed with which the demand side of this AI boom materialized.
Right. PJM interconnection, for those who don't know, that's the largest U.S. power grid operator.
It is. It serves 13 states and the District of Columbia, and it is facing just massive challenges trying to meet the surging electricity needs of these new AI-driven data centers.
Give us the projections here. Just how much power are we really talking about?
The PJM projections suggest these data centers will consume about 30 gigawatts of electricity by the year 2030.
30 gigawatts. And for context?
For context, 30 gigawatts is equivalent to the power needs of approximately 20 million homes.
20 million homes. That's not just an increase, that's an exponential, almost vertical surge in demand on the existing grid capacity.
It's completely unsustainable with the current infrastructure. And that surging demand is already translating into real economic fallout for consumers.
Where are we seeing this?
In New Jersey, for example, electricity prices soared by nearly 20% in just the last few months.
Wow.
And this has spurred intense political and voter advocacy pressure. They want the data centers, these massive new consumers, to shoulder a much greater share of the expenses rather than burdening ordinary households and small businesses.
So what's the plan? Surely PJM has strategies on the table to manage this exponential growth.
They do, but here's the critical problem. There is absolutely no consensus.
No.
PJM members, who are mostly energy industry representatives, held an advisory vote recently, and they failed to reach the required two-thirds majority on any management strategy. They're at a total impasse.
That failure to agree is the most concerning part of this whole story. What were the competing strategies that led to this gridlock?
They considered three main approaches. First, you could force the data centers to generate their own power.
On-site, you mean?
Yes, often through on-site natural gas generators or dedicated microgrids. The second option was to halt all new grid connections entirely until power reliability can be guaranteed.
Just put a moratorium on new data centers.
Exactly. And the third was to fast-track new energy projects, which means bypassing some of the normal regulatory hurdles to get new power generation online much faster.
So why couldn't they agree on something? Forcing self-generation seems logical.
Well, the industry members were completely fractured. The data center developers naturally opposed mandatory self-generation.
Too expensive.
A massive initial fiscal burden and a huge complexity. They'd much prefer the cheaper existing grid connection. Halting new connections was opposed by economic developers who are worried about stifling growth in their regions.
And fast-tracking.
That was opposed by environmental groups and also by some utilities who feared overcommitting capital prematurely. The gridlock just highlights how deeply these tech giants seek preferential treatment, while the energy companies are terrified of the fiscal repercussions of this rapid, hugely expensive expansion.
And the warning that came out of this gridlock meeting is dire.
It is. The analysis says failure to manage this could lead to widespread forced blackouts during peak demand periods.
Rolling blackouts.
Widespread rolling blackouts and a massive fiscal burden. Analysts project an additional $163 billion in electricity costs just between 2028 and 2033 for the PJM region if they don't find a solution now.
And here's the climate paradox we alluded to earlier. The simultaneous push to power these centers with renewables is being completely counteracted by the necessary push for new, rapid deployment natural gas facilities.
It's a zero-sum game right now. The sheer scale and speed of the demand is forcing a reliance on fossil fuels that produce significantly higher greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's directly counteracting the climate benefits promised by the initial shift to green power.
It is. One step forward for tech, two steps back for the climate.
Okay, moving to another critical climate intersection. We have a recent study that's revealed a hidden planetary scale trade-off, and it was caused by an unintended experiment in global shipping.
This is a remarkable piece of research. The conflict in the Red Sea forced this massive rerouting of global shipping all the way around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa.
A much longer route.
Much longer. And this inadvertently created a perfect real-world climate study opportunity. Scientists seized this chance to study the effect of the low-sulfur marine fuels that were mandated globally back in 2020 by the International Maritime Organization, or IMO.
Right. And everyone assumed these low-sulfur fuels were a clear environmental win. They reduced that lung-damaging air pollution in port cities.
A huge public health benefit, yes. But what the study revealed about the broader climate impact was unexpected.
What did they find?
They found that these cleaner fuels significantly diminish the ability of ship emissions to seed bright, reflective clouds.
You're talking about those ship tracks, the long white clouds you can see from space.
Exactly. This inadvertently reduces the overall cooling effect of ship emissions by a significant 2/3.
Wait, so let me get this straight. Making the fuel cleaner actually reduces a crucial mechanism that was accidentally fighting global warming.
That is the climate twist. It's wild. Previously, ships emitted these sulfur aerosols that acted as condensation nuclei. They helped create brighter, more reflective clouds that bounced sunlight back into space and provided a net cooling effect.
So by removing the sulfur to clean the air,
We also removed the cloud seeding mechanism, which could be inadvertently accelerating global warming. It's a perfect real-world example of a well-intended technological fix having profound hidden planetary trade-offs that we're only now starting to quantify.
that is a genuinely provocative insight. It links technology, policy, and these massive unintended environmental consequences. Let's shift now to Act 3, where we're going to analyze the global geopolitical chessboard and see how these economic and technological forces are playing out in diplomacy and conflict. The pace of diplomatic action regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict has accelerated dramatically. It's really moving into extremely high-stakes territory now. President Donald Trump has announced what he calls a fine-tuned 28-point peace plan for Ukraine.
And the immediate diplomatic deployment is the biggest news here. It's happening very fast.
Who is being sent?
Trump is dispatching two key figures, his envoy Steve Witkoff and the U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll. They're going to Moscow to meet directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Now, sending the Army Secretary into direct peace negotiations with an adversary, that's highly unusual, isn't it?
It's very unusual protocol. It blends military authority directly with high-level diplomacy in a way we don't often see.
And we're hearing that the Ukrainians have already given a provisional nod to this framework.
That's the report, yes. Ukrainian officials have apparently reported reaching an understanding with the U.S. regarding the plan. They're stating that only minor details are left to settle.
So that suggests the basic framework of these 28 points has been accepted by Kyiv, at least in principle.
It does, and those points reportedly include things like territorial concessions and significant limitations on the size of the Ukrainian military. The fact that they've reached an understanding signals that there's immense pressure being applied.
That pressure is palpable, especially when you consider the public statements from the diplomatic team itself. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, who holds a significant role in U.S. military strategy, has publicly urged Ukraine to accept a peace deal.
And his language was blunt. He urged them to accept it to avoid what he called imminent defeat.
Imminent defeat, that's incredibly strong language coming from the U.S. Army Secretary.
It is. He's warning that Ukraine's position on the battlefield is deteriorating rapidly, partly due to escalated Russian military actions and partly due to waning Western support. His involvement, bringing that direct military perspective to the negotiation table, really underscores the seriousness of the concessions being considered.
The entire situation is just fraught with controversy, particularly following a leaked report from Bloomberg regarding the envoy Witkoff's conduct.
This was a diplomatic bombshell. Bloomberg reported on leaked phone call transcripts that suggested Witkoff was actually coaching Russian officials during the negotiations.
Coaching them?
Advising them on their strategy, on potential counter-arguments to use against the U.S. position. It raises incredibly serious questions about the integrity and the impartiality of the envoy.
So how did President Trump respond to this allegation that his own envoy was coaching an adversary?
Trump publicly defended Witkoff's tactics. He characterized the situation as simply standard negotiations.
Standard.
His argument was that in high-level diplomacy, you have to understand and even anticipate the adversary's position, and that the leak itself was just a political smear campaign.
But critics are arguing that coaching an adversary goes way beyond standard procedure.
Oh, absolutely. They argue it verges on completely undermining the State Department's unified position and essentially negotiating against yourself.
This entire episode has, predictably, fractured the Western alliance. What is the consensus coming out of Moscow regarding Europe's role in all this?
Well, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticized EU leaders pretty harshly. He asserted they are merely using Ukraine as a proxy in a failed attempt to defeat Russia.
And we have other voices from Russia as well.
Yes, the Russian analyst Fyodor Lukyanov suggested that lasting peace will only come when Kyiv fully accepts the reality of the current situation on the ground.
Which means permanent loss of the occupied territories.
That's the clear implication.
And from the European side, The reaction has been just as sharp. It sounds like it's bordering on a crisis of confidence.
The former EU foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, was incredibly outspoken. He asserted that the U.S. has completely sidelined the European Union regarding this peace plan.
He didn't mince words.
Not at all. Borrell stated bluntly that Europe can no longer consider the U.S. an ally under the current political climate, and he urged the EU to immediately adjust their foreign policy strategy to ensure future self-reliance.
That's a major ongoing tectonic shift in transatlantic relations.
It is. And on the domestic U.S. front, we're seeing this unique tension unfold between the administration and Congress over military authority, which speaks to these deeper political divides.
What's happening there?
The FBI is now actively interviewing 6 Democratic lawmakers.
Why?
Because they previously recorded and released a video message warning military personnel about their legal obligation to refuse any illegal orders.
And this investigation follows a highly controversial threat from the Pentagon.
Yes, the Pentagon threatened to recall Senator Mark Kelly, who is a Navy veteran, back to active duty for what they labeled as seditious conduct related to this same issue.
The lawmakers argued they were simply reminding service members of their constitutional obligations and the proper chain of command, not trying to incite disobedience.
That's their position. But the administration clearly views this as an attempt to undermine the military structure and the rule of law. It just reflects the extreme polarization in Washington over the legality and ethics of potential military actions, specifically citing concerns over using the military in certain civilian or domestic contexts.
Turning now to the Middle East, we have a series of reports detailing some deeply concerning military actions and rhetoric surrounding the Israel-Gaza conflict and its spillover effects.
Yes. A recent Human Rights Watch report, that's HRW, has alleged that Israel used systematic ethnic cleansing and collective punishment in Gaza.
Those are extremely serious allegations.
They are, and if confirmed, they would highlight a severe divergence from established international norms regarding human rights and the treatment of civilian populations in conflict zones.
There are also specific reports concerning the use of prohibited weaponry.
Reports indicate the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, used widely banned cluster munitions in some attacks on southern Lebanon.
And just to be clear, cluster munitions are restricted for a very specific reason.
They are. They're restricted by the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which 124 countries have signed on to ban because they pose a severe, decades-long risk to civilians due to the high rate of unexploded ordnance they leave behind.
On the rhetorical front, Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, made some controversial statements that drew international condemnation.
Yes, Ben-Gvir made some highly charged statements where he rejected the very concept of a Palestinian people or of Palestinian statehood.
And this reflects a very hardline political stance within the current Israeli government.
It does. And it's a stance that international observers worry will escalate tensions further and actively undermine any potential for future peace efforts or a two-state solution.
The humanitarian efforts in Gaza are also under intense scrutiny right now, following some shocking allegations regarding the distribution of aid.
An ex-volunteer, Anthony Aguilar, has made some severe allegations concerning an organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF.
And this group was reportedly backed by both the U.S. and Israel.
That's correct. Aguilar alleged that the GHF was actually a facade for IDF military operations.
A facade? How?
He claims it was designed to lure desperate Palestinians to food distribution sites, not just for aid, but for intelligence gathering and for potential targeting.
That is a staggering allegation. What was the fallout from this?
The United Nations, the UN, immediately refused to collaborate with the GHF due to these accusations. That alone underscores the severity of the alleged breach of trust and humanitarian neutrality.
And what's next for these allegations?
Aguilar has stated he intends to present evidence at the International Criminal Court. Israel has, for its part, denied all the allegations, but the controversy has seriously hampered legitimate humanitarian operations in the region.
In other related news, Israel did confirm the return of the body of hostage drawer, or from Hamas, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or PIJ. But 2 other deceased hostages remain in Gaza.
And signaling strong, continued support for Israel, Germany has lifted its freeze on weapons exports to the country.
Okay, let's shift focus to East Asia, where the geopolitical flashpoints are intensifying, particularly around Taiwan.
Tensions have escalated very sharply between Beijing and Tokyo. This follows some recent comments from the Japanese Prime Minister, Sane Takaichi.
What did she say?
She suggested that Japan could militarily assist Taiwan if it were attacked by China.
That represents a tectonic shift in Japan's defense posture, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Takaichi's comments are a clear move away from Japan's long-standing post-World War II pacifist stance. It signals a new willingness to take a more proactive, even military role in regional security.
Which China would view as a direct and provocative move.
Without question. They see it as a complication of the delicate power balance in the South China Sea.
Taiwan's response, meanwhile, has been one of concrete preparation.
Yes, they've announced a significant $40 billion defense budget aimed directly at countering China's military threats.
So you have Japan's new rhetoric and Taiwan's massive budget allocation.
Both show a deepening commitment to readiness. That $40 billion budget is a massive investment aimed at modernizing their defenses and ensuring strategic stability in the face of China's rising military assertiveness.
Let's survey global political accountability now, beginning in Latin America with two major moments of reckoning regarding democratic norms.
Right. In Brazil, the former president Jair Bolsonaro has begun serving a 27-year prison sentence.
And this is for orchestrating the coup attempt back in 2022.
Yes, for his attempts to overturn the presidential election results. This is a really critical moment for global democracy. It demonstrates real accountability for attempts to subvert the constitutional order, which, mirrors some worrying global trends we're seeing in election denialism.
And in Guatemala, the current president, Bernardo Arevalo, is facing a constant campaign of judicial and political destabilization.
He is battling the public prosecutor's office, which is led by an official, Consuelo Porras, who the U.S. has actually accused of corruption.
And they've initiated over a dozen judicial actions against him?
Over a dozen since his inauguration. They are attempting to disrupt his presidency and discredit the 2023 election results. And there's a specific pressure point they're aiming for.
What's that?
2026. That's when critical judicial appointments will redefine the power balance in the country, and these current judicial actions are widely seen as an attempt to weaken Arevalo before that date arrives.
Across the Atlantic, in Guinea-Bissau, there was some recent political turmoil as well.
A military coup attempt led to the fortification of President Embalo's palace. This just underscores the nation's fragile political history and its ongoing instability since gaining independence from Portugal back in 1974. It really highlights the persistent challenges to democratic consolidation in West Africa.
Now let's dive into the murky waters of espionage and domestic corruption, starting with Turkey.
Turkish authorities have arrested 3 executives from major Turkish defense companies.
And the charges are for spying for foreign entities.
That's right. The allegations suggest they were providing private employee information to foreign intelligence services. And this is particularly noteworthy because Turkey's defense export sector, especially its drone technologies, is experiencing explosive growth right now, which makes it a prime target for industrial espionage.
In Ukraine, despite the ongoing war, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, or NBU, has been actively investigating high-level graft.
Indeed. NBU recently arrested individuals who are said to be close to President Volodymyr Zelensky.
And this was over a $100 million embezzlement scheme.
Yes, within the energy sector, specifically involving the state-owned nuclear power company Energobom. This really highlights the systemic corruption issues that persist at the highest levels, even as Ukraine relies so heavily on Western aid for its very survival.
Okay, let's pivot back to the U.S. and the pervasive issue of pay-to-play politics. We keep hearing about this alarming increase in billionaire spending on elections.
A critical analysis has confirmed it. Billionaires are exerting unprecedented financial influence on elections. They are spending more than ever, particularly since the 2010 Supreme Court decision in Citizens United v. the Federal Election Commission.
For those who might not be familiar, what exactly was the impact of that Citizens United ruling?
That decision essentially ruled that corporations and unions have the same free speech rights as individuals. This enabled unlimited corporate and union political spending through so-called super PACs and dark money groups.
So that links directly to the current surge in influence.
It suggests a systemic issue where the political power of the ultra-rich is simply overwhelming that of ordinary citizens.
And we have a specific example of a potential conflict of interest involving the current U.S. Secretary of Commerce.
Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, has emerged as a major promoter of data centers, which is a huge focus. given that PJM energy crisis we just discussed.
Right.
However, serious ethical concerns are being raised because his two sons lead his investment firm, Cantor Fitzgerald. And that firm benefits directly from the very infrastructure projects that he champions in his governmental capacity.
So that is a classic example of governmental policies potentially favoring specific private family financial interests.
The ultimate intersection of power, profit, and policy.
Let's take a closer look at what all these political and technological fault lines mean for our wallets. We're shifting into Act 4, economic realities and societal stress points. The UK Labour government has recently presented its budget, and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is attempting to balance fiscal responsibility with addressing a very severe cost of living crisis. Let's start with the policies designed to alleviate the financial stress on the average worker.
Okay, so the minimum wage for workers over 21 is set to increase to £12.71 per hour.
Which, on its face, seems like a pretty good raise.
It is. And it's welcomed by advocates as a significant increase. But economic experts are already questioning if this is a sufficient measure to combat the ongoing inflation and the high cost of living.
Particularly housing and energy costs.
Exactly. Those continue to squeeze household budgets relentlessly.
They also made a significant reversal on a prior austerity policy that had been widely criticized.
Yes, the controversial two-child benefit cap is set to be scrapped starting next year.
And this reverses a measure that critics argued did what?
They argued it exacerbated child poverty and unfairly penalized larger families. So this ensures that families can now receive universal credit support for all of their children, regardless of family size.
Now let's look at how the government plans to finance some of this. This is through some tax adjustments that are, shall we say, less popular.
Right. The Chancellor announced a freeze on income tax thresholds for an additional 3 years.
And this mechanism is known as fiscal drag. How does it work?
It's a subtle but highly effective way to increase the tax burden. It effectively pulls millions more workers into higher tax brackets over time as their nominal wages rise with inflation.
So you get a pay raise, but it pushes you into a higher tax bracket, and you might actually end up with less take-home pay.
Precisely. It's a way to increase tax revenue without explicitly raising the tax rates.
And high earners weren't spared either, particularly around savings mechanisms.
No, they weren't. High earners, especially those in the £100,000 income bracket, have expressed a lot of dismay over announced cuts to the cash limit for individual savings accounts, or ISS.
So this limits their ability to save effectively tax-free.
It does. It limits their ability to plan for the future, and it's generating criticism that the policy discourages long-term personal saving among the very people who already pay the highest rates of income tax.
Turning to energy and environment policy, Labor is relaxing restrictions on North Sea drilling. This seems like a surprising move given their climate commitments.
It's a major policy shift. This new North Sea strategy relaxes drilling restrictions to boost energy independence and economic growth.
So it's an attempt to balance immediate economic urgency, especially amid global energy crises, against their own environmental commitments.
Exactly. It signals that, for now, energy security is taking priority over climate goals.
And electric vehicle owners, EV owners, are about to face a new tax, too. That also seems counterintuitive to the environmental push.
It does. Starting in April 2028, owners of EVs will face a new pay-per-mile tax.
How much?
It's set at 3 pence per mile, or 1.5 pence for plug-in hybrids. And the government's rationale is clear.
What is it?
As fewer people buy gasoline and pay fuel duty, they need a sustainable way to fund road maintenance. This is their answer.
But critics are arguing that this undermines the very incentive for EV adoption that we need to meet our climate goals. It's putting a financial hurdle right in front of the green transition.
It is. It creates a new fiscal hurdle for EV adoption, just as mass adoption is starting to take hold. And finally, just a quick note on pension changes.
Go ahead.
The government plans to reduce tax breaks associated with salary sacrifice arrangements for workplace pensions. This could potentially cap the amount that can be contributed without incurring national insurance charges. Again, it's a measure to raise revenue that might discourage long-term retirement saving.
Let's widen the lens back to global markets now. In the U.S., we're seeing some very mixed signals. There's instability in the job market, but also some slight optimism in the housing market.
The job market is showing significant stress. U.S. companies cut over 11,000 jobs per week through late October, according to the ADP report.
11,000 a week.
And on top of that, seasonal hiring for the upcoming holidays is projected to be the lowest it's been since the 2008 recession.
So that signals a lot of economic uncertainty among businesses and an expectation of cautious consumer spending.
Exactly. The housing market, however, saw a slight uptick.
What was that?
U.S. home sales rose by 1.2% in October. That's the highest volume since February. And it was driven almost entirely by a modest decline in mortgage interest rates.
So buyers are responsive to even slightly more favorable mortgage conditions.
Very responsive. It indicates there's potential for a recovery, but it's fragile and it's heavily dependent on interest rate stability.
Okay, here's a very colorful term that's emerging from the venture capital landscape. Zombie startups.
Chuckle. It's a great term. It describes these operational companies that are financially stagnant. They're not growing or scaling fast enough to justify those high venture capital valuations. They're just shuffling along.
But they're not dead.
Not dead. And the new trend is a rise in what are called hold forever investors who are acquiring these zombies.
And what's their strategy?
It's a classic buy, fix, hold strategy. They often leverage AI and operational efficiency improvements to quietly revitalize them over the long term.
And we have data reflecting this shift in VC behavior.
We do. So-called zombie funds. That's VC firms that are just managing their existing investments without making new high-risk ones, have surged by 50% since the end of 2021.
So it's a direct response to the market downturns.
It is. It's a need to find value in distressed assets rather than just chasing increasingly expensive growth.
Moving to Europe, the European Central Bank, or ECB, President Christine Lagarde delivered a very stark warning about the continent's fundamental economic structure.
She warned that Europe's dominant economic models, particularly the traditional export-dependent structures and the generous social welfare systems you see in many nations, are becoming obsolete.
Obsolete, that's a strong word.
It is. She says they are fundamentally misaligned with current global realities, which favor high-tech innovation and digital economies. She's calling for major structural reform to prevent stagnation.
And adding to Europe's financial stress, another ECB Governing Council member, Olaf Sleipen, raised a red flag about stablecoins.
Yes, he warned that a massive surge in stablecoin demand could actually destabilize the Eurozone economy. With the global stablecoin market now approaching $255 billion, a major coordinated sell-off or a shift in value could force the ECB to rethink its entire interest rate policy to mitigate the potential fallout. It raises serious concerns about monetary sovereignty and the impact of decentralized finance.
Finally, let's look at India's strategic resource push. This is aimed directly at reducing dependency on a rival power.
Right. The Indian Union Cabinet has approved a massive scheme, about 7,280 crore rupees, aimed at bolstering their domestic production of rare earth magnets.
And these materials are vital for so many modern technologies.
They're vital components for EVs, for wind turbines, and for advanced military technology, including the U.S. F-35 fighter jet.
So this is a critical national security move.
Absolutely. It's designed to reduce their reliance on China, which currently dominates the rare earth supply chain, and to secure their own technological self-reliance for the future.
Our next segment covers major issues of justice and accountability globally, beginning with the investigation into that audacious Louvre heist in Paris.
Right. 4 additional suspects were arrested in connection with the €88 million jewel heist.
Are the jewels still missing?
Still missing. The investigation is ongoing, and authorities are still searching for them. But this incident has prompted some very serious discussions about security protocols at one of the world's most renowned cultural institutions.
And about the global network of organized crime that targets these high-value assets.
Exactly. In the U.S. legal system, a judge is pushing for more transparency regarding the highly controversial Jeffrey Epstein records.
This is Judge Paul Engelmayer.
Yes. He's ordered the Justice Department to specify disclosures regarding the sealed Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein records. That includes grand jury documents and exhibits.
So this reflects an ongoing judicial effort to balance victim privacy with the public's right to know.
A very intense public right to information, especially in these high-profile sex trafficking cases.
And speaking of trafficking and social responsibility, Meta is facing a major lawsuit regarding its handling of child safety on its platforms.
A lawsuit against Meta accuses the company of prioritizing growth over child safety. And crucially, court filings have revealed a highly controversial internal policy.
What was it?
It was a 17-strike policy. That means a user could accrue up to 16 violations related to sex trafficking before any permanent action was taken on their account.
16 violations.
Former Instagram safety chiefs have criticized that threshold as unacceptably high for such severe misconduct. It suggests a systemic failure to protect vulnerable users.
Italy is taking a strong legal stand against gender-motivated violence, which has seen some troubling increases recently.
Yes, Italy has unanimously passed a law that creates the distinct crime of femicide.
Femicide, meaning gender-motivated murder against women.
Correct. And it will be punishable by a life sentence. This is a direct response to escalating violence against women, and it aims to enhance awareness, provide specialized legal proceedings, and ensure the motivation behind the crime is recognized legally.
We also have some harrowing reports concerning atrocities in West Africa involving paramilitary forces.
Refugees from Mali have provided detailed eyewitness testimonies to the BBC. They allege that Russian paramilitary forces, specifically linked to the Wagner Group, have committed cold-blooded killings and atrocities in the region amidst the ongoing conflict and political instability.
And these reports raise serious concerns about accountability for external actors operating in these volatile African nations.
Very serious concerns. Now, bringing this back to social tensions and free speech, there's an ongoing conflict in the UK over protests.
Dozens of peaceful protesters were arrested in London. Why?
For supporting Palestine Action, a group that the UK government has officially declared a terrorist organization.
So this illustrates the contemporary struggle over free speech and the boundaries of protest.
Exactly. It forces a public debate about where political dissent ends and illegal action begins.
Meanwhile, in Australia, teenagers are fighting for their digital rights against new legislation.
A group of teenagers has launched a high court challenge against a new law that bans social media accounts for anyone under the age of 16.
And what's their argument?
They argued the law infringes on their rights to assembly and expression, and that it could potentially affect their mental well-being and social connections during their formative years. It's part of a global debate on digital age restrictions.
And finally, a quirky sociological debate from South Korea that reflects some massive demographic shifts.
A Korean eatery sparked a huge debate by controversially refusing to serve solo diners.
Refusing to serve them, what was their reasoning?
They cited a desire not to sell loneliness. This reflects these significant societal changes in South Korea, particularly the rapid rise in single-person households and the cultural biases that still exist against single individuals.
Which contrasts sharply with other countries.
Sharply. Especially with a country like China, where the single economy is widely embraced and catered to.
We'll wrap up our main segments with a quick look at how new discoveries, some of them aided by technology, are literally rewriting history.
Starting with biblical archaeology. Excavations beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem have revealed an ancient garden complex.
And it dates back to the 1st century CE.
Exactly. This is potentially connected to the crucifixion site, and it enriches our understanding of early Christian history and the actual topography of the area during that pivotal era.
Egypt, meanwhile, gives us a look at the industrial-scale wealth that built the ancient world.
Archaeologists have uncovered a sprawling 3,000-year-old ancient Egyptian gold mining complex in the Sukhari Mountains.
This wasn't just a small mine.
No, the site is comprehensive. It has tools, workshops, residential buildings, and even evidence of rituals that were tied to the gold extraction process. It offers this incredibly vivid picture of ancient Egyptian industry and economic power.
From pharaohs to naval history, we have the discovery of a legendary World War II destroyer.
The USS Edsall. It was famously nicknamed the Dancing Mouse for its agility and its elusive tactics. It was discovered in the Indian Ocean after 82 years.
And its discovery highlights the fierce maritime battles of World War II.
It does, and it also raises these complex ethical questions about preserving wartime wreck sites as graves for the lost sailors while still enabling historical research.
And finally, technology is helping us reconstruct a lost world from documents that were once considered completely unreadable.
Artificial intelligence tools are being used to transcribe 300,000 medieval Jewish manuscripts from the Cairo Geniza archive.
300,000.
And these documents, written in Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and Yiddish, are accelerating the reconstruction of this vibrant medieval community. It's a powerful demonstration of AI's application in translating complex, fragmented historical texts and bringing lost worlds back to life.
What a monumental journey this deep dive has been. I mean, we moved from 3.3 billion-year-old microbes all the way to the massive present-day challenge of data centers, driving record energy demand.
And that convergence of high-tech competition, like Alphabet taking on NVIDIA in the AI chip market, is undeniably driving these massive capital commitments.
Billions and billions of dollars.
And that technological arms race has profound, real-world, and highly political consequences. It intersects directly with that high-stakes diplomacy we talked about.
Forcing countries like Ukraine into these agonizing peace talks under intense pressure.
And simultaneously creating massive instability in our global energy grid, as evidenced by that PJM crisis.
For me, I think the major aha moment today was really about ourselves. The fact that the human brain doesn't hit its true adult mode until age 32. It just completely reshapes how we view responsibility, education, and development.
It forces a generational shift in perspective. It really does.
It does.
And tying into that human vulnerability, the discovery that regulating mood disorders might hinge on a metabolic protein, connexin 43, suggests that mental health treatment is on the cusp of a major scientific pivot.
A pivot toward energy and chemistry.
Exactly, offering new, targeted hope that goes beyond our current models.
Before we sign off, let's return to that provocative closing thought from our discussion on climate trade-offs. Specifically, that global unintended experiment in shipping.
Right.
If the global adoption of low-sulfur shipping fuel inadvertently reduces cloud cover, and thus the planet's crucial cooling mechanism, potentially accelerating warming,
then what other massive, well-intended technological fixes, from next-generation sodium batteries to large-scale carbon capture projects, might have hidden planetary-scale trade-offs that we just haven't discovered yet?
what costs might we be incurring today for solutions that seem perfect on the surface?
Something for you, the learner, to ponder until our next deep dive.
You're enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.